I am Taylor Jones. We have been attending Harvester for a little less than a year. Our oldest son, Finn, was diagnosed with autism when he was just getting ready to turn 3 years old. Leading up to that, I had known something was different as early as 9 months. Of course, I've just always had autism in the back of my mind. I have no other explanation for it other than God, I feel like, was just telling me that he had it and I needed to watch out for it. My husband and I had always been very faithful in our tithing for reasons outside of Finn beforehand. A couple months go by, we start getting medical bills rolling in, and we look at each other and he's like, I don't know how we're gonna make this up. I don't know how we're gonna get this amount per month that we're gonna need for him. And not very long after that, my husband got a call from his work where his boss was like, hey, I'm giving you all a raise. And when his raise came in, it was within $1 of the amount we needed per month to just cover his therapies. And that is not an accident. That's never an accident, especially it being so close. About 9 months later, we had the same thing happen. We found out that Finn actually needed more speech therapy than what we were giving him. And again, we were like, okay, how are we gonna come up with this? Where's this gonna come from? Oddly enough, my husband and I were like, he's never not brought it to us before. We're gonna find it again. Well, sure enough, within like a week later, a friend told us about a grant that we could get that would cover what we needed per month to give him the extra speech therapy. So fast forward to last year, and we found out leaving the area we were in before, we actually lost a grant that we had. But again, my husband and I were like, okay, it's fine. We've never not had what we needed. It'll be figured out. A couple months after being here, Nikomas did a sermon on tithing. And while we were sitting there listening to it, I felt the tug like, hey, I think you need to increase your tithing to this amount. And whenever we get those tugs, those are never easy tugs to deal with. And I don't want it to come off like it's always just like, oh my gosh, yes, this is so easy. We're gonna do it. Like, it sometimes is a struggle. But we talked about it and we were both like, hey, again, we got to remember the things that have happened to us in the past and how he's always been there for us. And so we decided, we're like, okay, we're gonna do it. And again, not a week later, we get a phone call that we got a new grant for Finn to cover the exact amount that we had pledged to tithe to here. So we've never not been taken care of. But I also can't imagine the blessings we would have missed out on if we wouldn't have just trusted him. When it comes to giving, I like to think of the woman who gave everything she had. She came. She gave everything she had, and everyone was like, she only gave this small amount. But Jesus said, but she gave everything. She gave everything I asked of her to give. He's not asking us to give everything. He's asking for this small amount, and he can do so much with it. So do you really, I don't understand how you can trust him in every other aspect of your life, but not trust him with your financials. It does not add up. You can't have one without the other. I feel like you either trust him with everything or you don't trust him with anything. You can't trust him in just a few areas of your life. You have to trust him in everything. I've never heard of a person regretting tithing. And again, it's not in excess, but you're taken care of. And just, my gosh, if that's the price I have to pay for no stress and worrying about my financials, yeah, I'll give him whatever he wants.
Amen. How many of you, by show of hands, know that God provides? You've experienced that in your own life. It's not just Taylor's story, that's your story as well. That's my story as well. And that's what I've loved about just pouring through these passages. So thank you so much for being here. We are in week 5. For those of you who are here at our Troy campus, so glad that you're here. For those of you at St. Charles, glad you're here. We're in a weekend that is going to be a powerful weekend and a powerful statement of our hearts for the one. So grab your Bibles, open up to Mark chapter 12. That's the passage we're going to be looking at today, Mark chapter 12. And what we're going to be talking about today is this idea that everyone can give generously for the one. Everyone can give generously for the one. That's the story that we're going to see here in this poor widow who she also participated in an offering and she was able to give. And if she can give, it tells me this, that every single one of us in here can give as well. Now, we've been talking about having this heart for the lost, and in doing so, we've been talking about the vision that God's laid on our church to launch a campus at our in O'Fallon, Missouri, and expand our campus in Troy, Missouri. And today's the day where we all get to participate in this. And so I'm titling this sermon this, All for the One. All for the one. And my hope is that by the end of this day, we as a church can make a statement that every single one of us here, whether you're in Troy, whether you're in St. Charles, that every single one of us is for the one. And we're going to do that with our hearts. We've done that with our prayers. And today, we're going to get to make a commitment over the next 25 months that we are all in it for the one. And we're going to get to do something very similar to what this woman in Mark chapter 12 did. So let me read this passage, and then I want to talk about it quickly, and then I want to lead us into our time of commitment. The passage says this. It says, Jesus sat down opposite the treasury, and he watched the people putting money into the offering box. Many rich people put in large sums, and a poor widow came and put in 2 small copper coins, which make a penny. And he called his disciples to him and said to them, truly, I say to you, this poor widow has put in more than all of those who are contributing to the offering box. For they all contributed out of their abundance, but she out of her poverty has put in everything she had, all she had to live on. Now, one of the things that stands out to me right off the bat in this passage is that Jesus is positioning himself in a place in the temple where he can watch people give and put in their offerings. Now, I do not recommend you do this at Harvester Christian Church, okay? If you pull up a chair right next to our offering boxes that are in the back of our rooms and just watch people put in offerings, we're gonna remove you. We're gonna ask you to step aside. We don't know what you're up to. Are you planning on taking it? Are you judging people? But the heart of Jesus, what he does in this moment is so interesting. It says that he watches them as they give their offerings. And he notices the rich giving offerings, and he notices the poor giving offerings. And then he calls his disciples over in this private moment where he uses that as an object lesson. But what this tells me right off the bat is when you sit in this moment where we're getting ready to make financial commitments to the For the One campaign, I want you to know this. Jesus sees your situation. Jesus, he sees your situation as well. Now, this may be an obvious question, but how did Jesus know they were rich? How did Jesus know that she was poor? Well, the obvious answer is he's God and he knows everything, right? But I also imagine there were some visuals that kind of cued him into who was rich and who was poor. I imagine there were some audio things that were happening where he was hearing bags of change hit the offering box when that person came forward, and then just a small clink, clink whenever the poor widow dropped her 2 pennies into the offering. I think there's an obvious understanding that Jesus sees our situation, but I think when we step into these moments, we forget that he knows the situation we're in. And can I tell you this? I know every single one of us are in different situations right now. We're getting ready to approach this commitment in a very similar way, but from a very different situation than the people sitting even right next to us. Jesus knows your situation. This woman's situation was that she was poor and she was a widow. She had no money and she had no husband, which means there was no income coming in. In this society, in this day and age, it was the husband who provided all the income. And so she couldn't just put in her 2 coins and then lean on her husband to provide for her afterwards. You know what she had to do? Put in her 2 coins and lean on her father to provide for her afterward. Jesus, as he's watching this happen, one of the interesting things that is absent from the story is Jesus judging the rich or judging the poor. As you read throughout this, Jesus makes some factual statements about each of them, but he never demeans either of them. He never looks at the rich people and says anything demeaning about who they are. He never calls them sinners. He never calls them to the carpet. Nor does he do that for this poor widow. But I'll tell you, as I'm reading this story, there's a little bit of frustration that kind of wells up in my heart. Because I wish Jesus would have responded a little bit differently in this situation. Okay, Jesus, I don't need you to call out the rich people. And I don't need you to necessarily praise the poor widow publicly. I love that he did that privately with the disciples. But here's what I wish he would have done. Like if I were to write this story in a way that my heart thinks is better, here's how I would have written it. That Jesus saw a poor widow put 2 pennies in, so he called his disciples over and said to them, "Go get those pennies, give them back to her. She needs them more than I do." That's what I wish Jesus would have done. Probably because that's what I would have done were it me in that situation. But that's not what happens. Jesus sees her poverty. He knows that she's put in everything she has, and then he lets her walk away. He lets her give everything anyway. You know, our hearts, we love giving people a reason not to give. And can I tell you, my heart has desired to do that through this entire series that we've been talking about. I want to give people every out and every back door so that you don't have to participate in this. You're in a specific situation that I understand it, and so don't pray about it, don't think about it, just don't give. It's okay. We love giving people reasons not to give. Well, you're in a poor situation, so don't worry about it. You've just lost your spouse, widow, so don't worry about it. Or many churches do this too. You're a visitor to our church, don't give. Like just come and receive. You're in debt, don't give. Just focus on yourself and getting yourself straight first before you think about others. And I think our heart desires to do this because we mean well. But here's what we do in the process. When we look at the widow and we tell the widow not to give, we value her pennies over her worship. Our heart values those pennies. We're good Western Americans. And those pennies hold power. Those pennies held no power in that woman's heart. You know what held power in that woman's heart? God. Her worship. That's where the power was. And our assumption that her pennies hold more power tries to say, you know what? Don't worship God. We'll sacrifice your worship of God. So long as you can hold on to those 2 pennies when you walk away from here. And I think that's the difference between Jesus' heart and our heart. But Jesus, get this, he let her walk away, and this isn't the first time he did this. You look at even just the book of Mark that we're in here. We're in chapter 12. You go 2 chapters back into chapter 10. Jesus does the same thing. He talks to this rich young ruler who wants to follow him, and he tells him, here's what you need to do before you follow me. You need to sell everything you have, give it to the poor, and then come follow me. He was willing to let that guy give everything away, to sell it all, and then to follow him. And the man, he walks away, giving nothing away. He says, that's too much. I'm not going to do that, Jesus. And so he walks away sad. Then Jesus turns to his disciples again, and he says, it's easier for a poor man to enter the kingdom of heaven than a rich man. It's hard for the rich to let go of the power of the penny. That's where their power is. It's not in me. It's not in the Father. Their trust is in their finances. And then Peter speaks up, and he says, Lord, us disciples of yours, us 12, we've given away everything to follow you. And you know what Jesus did? he allowed them to give everything away to follow him. And Jesus told them, those who give everything away, they will get so much more in return in this life and the next. And those who are first will be last, and those who are last will be first. Jesus allows people to give. You get a few chapters later, after the chapter we're in here in chapter 12, when we get to chapter 14, and we see this happen again. There's this woman who takes this expensive perfume that she owns, and she pours it out on Jesus' feet, the whole bottle, all of it, not just a little dab on Jesus' feet. She pours the whole thing out on his feet, cleanses his feet with it, and all the rich religious people around her begin to yell at her. How could you waste so much? You could have sold that and given all that money to the poor, but you've poured it out. Now you've got nothing, and now the poor have nothing. And Jesus stops them and says, the poor you will always have with you, but she has done what is better, because she will not always have me here in her presence. And he allows this woman to give. And here he is now, when this poor widow gives her final 2 pennies, he allows her to do the same thing. And then he begins to measure the gifts that he sees. He sees the rich people giving their gifts. He sees the poor giving their gifts. He calls his disciples over, and what he begins to do is give the disciples this new heavenly exchange rate on giving. And he says, you might think that the rich people have given more than the poor widow, but she has given so much more. And I love that he uses the word more to describe her, because I doubt anybody has ever used the word more to describe this woman. But Jesus essentially says she has done more. And what we learn from that is that Jesus measures your heart, not your gift. Jesus measures your heart, not your gift. And as we're getting ready to step into a moment of commitment, I know our heart wants to measure things differently. As you begin to think about what you're going to write down on that commitment card that you got whenever you came into the room, you're going to begin to measure that against somebody else's gift, or you're going to measure it against what you wish you could do in a different situation, in a different season. And what Satan's going to tell you is, your gift is small. Or he might say, your gift is too big. Don't do that. But can I tell you this? Jesus is not measuring your gift. What he's measuring is the heart that you bring into the moment. And what I love about this woman's heart is the way that she gave her gift. Now, there's this little practical thing that we get to read about her gift that is easy to skip over. I want to highlight it real quick. How many coins did this woman give? How many coins? 2 coins, right? It says she gave 2 coins, which means this. She could have given 1 coin and kept the other coin. It wasn't, well, I got to give or not give. For her, there was choice in her gift. She could have given 1 and kept 1. And you know what that would have meant? She gave half of all of her possessions in this offering. How generous would that have been? How generous she would have been just by giving 1. But her heart comes to this moment, and she wasn't seeking to hold on to pennies. She was seeking to hold on to God and God alone. And so for her, she walks up in faith, not having a lot. I promise you, this woman has prayed. This is a woman of prayer. She's had to lean on to the Father to be cared for. In her situation, in her financial situation, as well as her marriage situation, she's had to lean on to the Father to care for her. And so she walks up to this moment in faith. She drops everything she has, and then she walks away in faith with no coins, but holding on to the Father with both hands. For the rich, here's what I promise you about them. They gave generously. I'm guessing there was some joy in their giving. But I'm also guessing there was probably no nerves in their giving. They weren't nervous about their gift. They weren't concerned about how much they were putting in. They walk up with no jitters, and then they walk away with no jitters. Because they gave from their abundance, which means they also walked away with their abundance still. And here Jesus is. He's talking to his disciples, and he says, you need to know that this woman has given more than all of them combined because her heart has given everything. And I gotta imagine that touched Jesus' heart. Because when Jesus looks at her heart, you know what he sees? He sees the heart of his Father in her. He sees his own heart in her. Because here, in just a few days from now, Jesus is getting ready to give the same size gift that she gave. To offer the same size gift that she gave. Let's read about her gift one more time in verse 43 and 44. It says, the poor widow has put in more than all of those who are contributing to the offering box. For they all contribute out of their abundance. But she out of her poverty has put in everything she had. All she had to live on. Her gift seems eerily similar to the gift that Jesus would give. Where he didn't just give out of his abundance as God. He didn't just give out of his leftovers as God, but he puts in everything he has for the sake of the lost, to do whatever it takes to win the lost and wounded back to the Father. And so when she gives, I think what Jesus sees is the gospel message being preached loudly. The gospel that the Father is willing to sacrifice all, even his final breath, for his sons and daughters. And I think he sees a heart that he desires to be our heart as well. He's not looking at the gift and saying, I want you to give this gift that she gave. I think what God wants us to do in this moment is to have the heart of the woman whenever she gave. And so what I want to do is I want to ask you this question and then talk about it a little bit. When it comes to giving, what kind of heart do you bring to it? If you were to describe your heart in those giving moments, how would you describe your heart? And there's a variety of different kinds of hearts that come into giving moments. In fact, I think there's a progression of maturity of giving of the heart, a progression of growth and generosity of the heart. And I think it's worth asking our own hearts, heart, what kind of attitude do you have when you give? And maybe these four evaluations of the heart will help you, like it's helped me. This first one is a reluctant heart will give. And so maybe the base level of giving for people when they first give is they give from a reluctant heart. And a reluctant heart asks this question, should I give? Should I give? This is the heart that says, okay, there's an opportunity to give right now. Should I participate or not? I see somebody in need right now. Should I give or not? And then we begin to weigh the circumstances and situations. Well, how much is in my bank account? What kind of situation am I in? And should I give or should I just pass up this opportunity and wait for the next opportunity? A reluctant heart sees giving as optional. That God doesn't want us necessarily to give, but on occasion maybe he does, and so we have an option whether we give or not. A reluctant heart gives when they can spare it, but usually, most of the times, doesn't, because we hesitate out of fear, we hesitate to give out of uncertainty, we have a scarcity mindset of, if I give this, what if I don't have anything? I should hold on to it. But on occasion, a reluctant heart will give. I think the next level up is this heart. It's an obedient heart. A heart of generosity that says, not just should I give, but how much should I give? And so an obedient heart has gotten to the place where the heart knows, you should give. The question is not should I or shouldn't I. The answer is yes, you should. But now the question is, okay, if I should, how much should I give? What I love about this heart is that this person sees the value of giving. They've recognized that there's a value for the giver and there's also a value for the receiver. And actually, giving is a responsibility of the community. That if you're going to be a part of the community, then you also wear the responsibility of giving and holding that value. This person does the math. They're an obedient person. So they look through the scriptures and say, okay, the scriptures say to give this percent or this amount, and so I'm actually going to be obedient to that, and I'm going to settle into a consistent amount. This person also, often is tithing. Because they've looked in the Bible and said, the Bible says give 10%, and so I'm going to do the math, and I'm going to faithfully, every time money comes in, 10% goes back. And that's how my generosity is, because it's part of my responsibility as a Christian. Now, there's a next level of giving that fewer people get to. But I think all of us strive towards, and in fact, I believe this is the New Testament example of giving. And it's giving not just from an obedient heart, but from a generous heart. This heart is not asking, how much should I give? This heart is asking, how much can I give? How much can I know what I should give, but I wonder what I can do. And so it's a heart that's a little bit more stretched in generosity. And this person asks that question because they've unlocked something special about giving. They've unlocked the joy in giving. A heart that aims to keep growing in generosity, not just for the benefit of the other, but for the benefit of their own heart and what generosity does for their own heart. For the generous heart, giving is a privilege. It's an honor. They're looking for opportunities to jump onto because they believe this, that generosity is a reflection of God's grace to them. That every time that they give, it's like this grace that they're reflecting onto people. Just like God has given to them generously and graciously, they reflect that back. And I say this is the goal of New Testament giving because the New Testament doesn't give us a percent. It actually takes the Old Testament percent and raises it to a new level. Where in the New Testament, you see people giving way more than a tithe. They're giving abundantly and over and above, and they're not trying to do the math. But in 2 Corinthians, Paul, he instructs the church. He says it this way. He says, don't give out of a reluctant heart. Don't just give out of compulsion that I have to do this because I'm part of the community and I've got to meet the 10%. He says, what I desire for your heart is to experience the joy. And so give cheerfully when you give. Unlock the joy of giving. But then there's this fourth level that I rarely see, and I've gotten glimpses of it, and I haven't gotten a glimpse of it in my own heart. But I'm praying not in my own heart yet. I strive towards this. And it's the heart of the widow. And it's not just a generous heart, but it's an extravagant heart. An extravagant heart actually reverses the entire question. And what they're asking is, how much should I keep? Not how much can I give, but they start from the assumption of, God, I'm going to give it all away until you tell me how much I need to keep for myself. If you don't show me what to keep, God, I'm giving it all. And that's what this woman does. That's what the disciples do. They approach giving from this mentality that everything belongs to God. And so none of it is mine. And so I can put it all in his hands and trust that he will care for me according not to my riches, but according to his riches and according to his glory. And so I don't have to worry about my needs being taken care of. And this person approaches life differently. And it's the rare heart that can do this, but it's someone who you look at them and you would never even know that they've got money to give. Because they're not approaching life this way, like most Americans do, of, I got more in, so how do I spend more? I have more in, so maybe I can upgrade my house. Maybe I can upgrade my car. Maybe I can upgrade my standard of living. This person approaches it so much differently, where they say, I am taken care of at this level. And so I'm going to live simply. And if more comes in, I keep my standard of living the same, and I just give more away. And I give more away. This is the kind of person who, when they pass away, everybody thought they had nothing because their house is nothing to look at, their cars are nothing to look at, they don't have very much, but what they've done is they've privately become generous. Even though maybe they are wealthy, they are privately just becoming generous and giving it all away. They upgrade their generosity, not their standard of living. This is a heart that's rare. It's a heart that I strive towards. But I think the thing that we need to do as we approach giving is just ask our heart, what kind of question are you asking of the Lord? What kind of question are you asking of the Lord? Is it, should I give? Is it, how much should I give? Is it, how much can I give? Or is it, God, how much should I keep? I think to reach the one, what it's going to take is not a dollar amount. Obviously, you've heard that we've set a dollar amount on this campaign of $6 to $8 million. But here's the number one goal. The number one goal is 100% participation. 100% participation. That we get to the end of this and every single one of us, all of our hearts have participated in this. At what level? I don't know. That's between you and the Lord to figure out. But my hope is that every single one of us bring our hearts into this situation. Which means this, it's gonna take 250 Troy campus people. Which means this, it's gonna take 2,000 plus St. Charles campus people. Which means this, it's gonna take 1,000 plus online people. All of us giving all of our hearts to the Lord if we are going to participate in not just raising $6 to $8 million, but reaching the lost and wounded in this world. It's gonna take every single one of our hearts. And here's what I'm telling you. I'm telling you that as you approach this, I pray that this is your prayer. God, this may not be all of my money, but this is all of my heart. God, this may not be all of my money, but this is 100% of my heart that I'm pouring into this. Over the next 25 months, God, I'm stepping out uncomfortably to give all of my heart to you. And so, church, my prayer is this, that none of us leave our hearts on the table, and that every single one of us gives our entire heart over to God. And here's what I promise you will see happen. Jesus, he will honor you. He will honor your heart. He will honor your gift. Jesus honors any gift given in faith. Any gift given in faith. He's not measuring the number that you put down on a card. What he's measuring is the heart that went in to arriving at that number. So here's what I want to do. I want to switch us over into a moment that's going to feel incredibly practical, but a moment that is going to be an incredible moment of offering not just money, but our hearts as well. So go ahead and pull out your commitment cards that you have. What we're going to do is we're going to give you a moment in service to take some time and pray and write down your commitment on this card. And then we're going to sing a song, and as you're ready, we're going to ask you to come forward, both at our Troy campus, at our St. Charles campus. We have boxes up front. You can just take that card, fold it up, and then make your commitment, just like the rich people in the temple did, just like the poor widow in the temple did. We're going to take our commitments, and we're going to put them in the box and say, God, here's not just my commitment, but here's my heart. But before we get to that moment, let me jump down into the practical of how to actually use this card, because I don't want it to be confusing to you, and there's some things on here that might be confusing. So the very first part should be pretty self-explanatory. It's just your name and your information. Now, if you're filling this out as a household, you only need to turn in one card. You can put, like if you're married, you can put your name and your spouse's name on there. It's okay to do that. But whoever's doing the writing, make sure they're the one with the best handwriting, okay? So that we can read this. One of the things that we hope to do over the next 25 months is send you a report that says, thank you for your commitment, and here's what you've given so far, so that you don't have to keep wondering, like, how much have I given? Have I hit my commitment? We're going to help you with that, but we can't help you with that if you don't put that information down. So make sure you put that info down. Now, the bottom part, the white part, that's actually where you write your commitment. Now, let me explain the 3 different ways to think about approaching this moment and giving in this moment. The first one is to approach it with a courageous gift. And many of you, you've been praying about that. You've actually already given your courageous gift. We're in a moment where we are in courageous giving season. And if you don't know what that is, it means you missed a vision night and you should have come to one. But you can still participate. A courageous gift is a one-time large gift to get your commitment started. And we're asking that every single person at Harvester give a one-time gift, the largest gift you've ever given. And what that gift will allow us to do is start moving on these projects immediately, where we don't have to wait 25 months to get started, that we can start moving right now. And so you can give that gift in a variety of different ways. If you came prepared, you can put it in an envelope and put it in the offering boxes in the back. Or if you want to give online, most of Harvester gives online. you can do that, but make sure you select For the One. If you're giving to St. Charles campus or Troy campus, typically you would select those. Everything for the One giving needs to be designated to For the One. And so if you're doing your courageous gift today, you can do it that way. If you need a little bit more time, we're going to give you more time. Even though today's the day to give that gift, we're going to leave that open for the next few weeks, okay? So it'll be opened until March 23rd, so you can give a courageous gift right off the bat. But whatever you're given, even if you've already given it, you can write it down there on that line and put that down as part of your commitment. The second line is consistent giving. Now, this is the way that many of us give at Harvester Christian Church, where we regularly give our tithes and offerings, and most of you know what you normally give. I am not asking you to put that number on this line. If you put that number on this line, that equals out to 0, because what we're totaling is our above and beyond giving. And so if you give typically $10,000 a year, don't put $10,000 there. Put on the number you're saying, here's what I plan to give on a monthly, weekly, however often you give, above and beyond my normal giving. And what you're gonna do is, if you give monthly, you're gonna multiply that number by 25, and you're gonna put your 25-month total on the line, okay? So you're not putting a weekly total on the line, a monthly total, a quarterly total on the line. You're putting a 25-month total. So you may need to do some math to figure out, all right, if I give this percent above and beyond times the 25 months, what does that equal? That's the number you would put on that line. The third line is to maybe think of giving creatively. Is there something that you're like, all right, I can give consistently, but I also have this thing that I want to sell so that I can give as well. For many of you, that's how you get your courageous gift. You're like, I'm actually cashing in a stock in order to give courageously. And so those numbers, it's the same thing, so you can just choose which line you put it on. For some of you, you're like, no, I want to give a courageous gift, but I also have this other thing. Maybe it's this used car that I just need to sell, but I haven't sold it yet, and so hopefully over the next 6 months I might be able to sell it, and then once I do sell it, then I can give that gift. Whatever that gift happens to be, you can put that there on the creative giving line. One of the things that I'd love for you to do also is maybe just tell the story of what that is. If it's a creative gift, one of the things that I love hearing about is how God uses people to creatively give towards his causes, and so doing that will help us. And then what you're going to do finally is you're going to add together number 1, number 2, and number 3 into your 25-month total. And that's the commitment that you're making above and beyond your normal giving for the One over the next 25 months. And then at the end of those 25 months, you and God get to determine what you do next. But what we're asking is for you to turn that card in over 25 months. Now, that 25-month period, just so you know, is going to go from April of this year to April of 2027. So that's the 25-month period. And so you've got some time before your consistent commitment kicks in. And so April to April is where we're running this campaign. Now, many of you have been praying about this moment for a long time. Some of you are hearing about it for the very first time, and I'm so glad to have you in this moment. Part of my heart wants to say, no, don't do this, but above and beyond that heart, my heart is to value your worship of God over your pennies. And so I'm gonna invite every single person, whether you're first time stepping into Harvester Christian Church, or you've been here for 40 years, to participate in this moment, so long as you're participating from a heart of worship. And so as you write these numbers down, write it in worship, write it in prayer. And I know there's gonna be some nerves as you write this, because the heart is gonna be able to begin to tell you, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. My hope is that your heart listens to Jesus. And whatever the number is, you don't walk away with pride of look at me and what I was able to do, nor do you walk away with shame saying, man, I just wish I could give more like the rich people. My heart is that your heart walks away saying, God, this number represents my heart and my worship to you. Let me pray, and then we're gonna give you a few moments to fill out that card. And then when you're ready, you can come forward and drop them in these commitment card boxes. Father, we enter this moment right now with hearts that are in trepidation, but God, also hearts of joy that we get to participate in what you're doing. So God, my prayer right now is that you begin to do something in our hearts, not just in this moment, but that continue for the next 25 months as we faithfully and consistently give our hearts over you every single time. God, our commitment is starting here, but it's not done here. God, after this moment, after For the One's over, God, we still commit to worship you. We still commit to encounter you and to become like you and to unleash your hope in this lost and wounded world. But God, right now, this is our way of saying, count us in. Count us in on bringing heaven to earth. It's in Jesus' name we